Republicans are racing to get tax reform passed on Capitol Hill. The president has said he wants a bill by Christmas. We turn now to one of the president's men working on that bill, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin. Welcome, Mr. Secretary. Before we get on to taxes, I want to ask you a question about Russia. You are in charge of carrying out the sanctions against Russia through the Treasury Department for meddling in last year's election. You've sat in the security meetings. How is it possible then for the president to say that he believes that President Putin is sincere when he says he didn't meddle in the last election?
Well, first, let me just say that we are absolutely carrying out the sanctions, and that's something we're very focused on. The president has said that he believes in the intelligence. He's also said that he believes that Putin believes what he said. But it's really time to move on off this issue. I think the president was focused on very important issues such as North Korea and Syria, where we have to get along with and have common goals with Russia. And that's what's really important right now.
But so just so people are clear, there's no ambiguity about this issue from your standpoint in terms of Russian interfering with the elections?
What I'd say is I've seen information. I'm not going to comment on any of the confidential information I've seen. We are carrying out the sanctions. But let me be clear. Nobody thinks this has had any impact on the election. So whatever occurred, there was no impact. So I think the American public is ready to move on to more important issues, tax reform and foreign policy and national security.
Yeah, I just think on the national security front, people think this is an enemy. We should behave with them as such. But let's move on to the question of taxes. The Senate bill came out this week. The corporate tax breaks that are very important to the president don't phase in until 2019. Is that a problem?
Well, let me tell you, the good news is both the House and Senate bill have the absolute same objectives. And I think we're looking forward to this week, the House passing the bill. Obviously, we would prefer if they kicked in sooner rather than later, but we're going to work with the Senate on that issue. And one of the things that's very important is even if they don't kick in, expensing will kick in right away. So companies will be able to take advantage of expensing at a higher tax rate. But I'm confident that this is one of the issues that when we get to conference will resolve between the House and the Senate.
Is there an economic impact if those corporate tax breaks don't kick in faster? You suggested it might hurt the market, hurt growth. What's the economic impact if they don't kick in faster?
Well, I commented as it relates to the market was actually if we don't get tax reform done. But I'm highly confident we'll get it done, and I think you see that in the market. As it relates to the specific impact of 1 year, we're studying that carefully. Again, there's offsetting effects in both directions.
You went out to California to make the pitch for tax cuts. You met with the Bahnsen Group, a wealth management group. Here's what the CEO had to say in the National Review. The deep challenge in getting tax reform done is that the government spends too much money and no one, including the president, wants to tackle that. What's your response?
Well, that's not an issue we're focused on right now, but we are focused on regulation. We are focused on kind of the 2-for-1, getting rid of 2 regulations for any one. And the president has an executive order that has us looking at efficiencies across the administration.
Here's the worry about not being focused on the debt and deficit is that, A, Republicans have been for a long time, so it's curious why they wouldn't be as focused on it in this context. And B, is that if the debt and deficit aren't addressed, the growth that you hope will happen won't happen because of the drag on the economy.
Well, the president is concerned about the debt. We've gone from $10 trillion to $20 trillion under the last administration. That's concerning. But our number one focus right now is on growth. If we can create 3% or higher sustained economic growth, that's over $2.5 trillion of additional revenue to the government, $10 trillion of additional revenue to the economy, and that's what's critical to the American public.
So there's obviously a lot of dispute about that growth number, particularly with this drag from the debt, that growth can be achieved. And one of your predecessors, obviously a Democrat, Larry Summers, had some tough words about those growth assumptions. He said, "I'm not aware of so irresponsible an estimate coming from a Treasury Secretary in the last 50 years. What's your response?
Larry has been quite outspoken as a previous Secretary Treasury. I'd say we have full transparency on the numbers. We have economists that come out. Most of them agree with us. The break-even is 35 basis points for us to have break-even. And I would just comment on the Obama administration, they were projecting 4% and higher GDP. So I find it somewhat amusing now that we're projecting 3% that all these people who projected higher are coming out and criticizing us.
Let me ask you about wages. One of the theories is that corporate tax rates come down, wages go up because the money is put. I talked to a Trump voter in New Hampshire who said that she believed the president would put pressure on corporations to make sure they turn the benefits of tax reduction into wages. Was that something he might do?
The president and I literally met with thousands of business people on the campaign, and we heard the same thing. Give us a competitive system in terms of taxes and regulation, and American business will compete better than anyone in the world and bring back trillions of dollars and create more jobs here.
But do you think he will weigh in the way he did, say, with Carrier and other companies?
Oh, of course he will.
Yeah. Let me ask you about lobbyists. The president said he wanted to drain the swamp in Washington. What instruction has he given you in putting this package together to keep lobbyists' influence out of the process?
Again, I'm not concerned about lobbyists. We've reached out to many, many trade groups to get lots of input, okay? Lots of people, lots of CEOs have had input into this, but this is all about growth. And this is about an economic program that I've had the opportunity to work with the president since the campaign. And we're focused. We're so excited to get this done and to the president's desk in December.
So no special instructions, though, about lobbyists getting them out of this process?
I haven't had any lobbyists really involved with us. We've had trade groups that we've listened to input, but I'm not concerned about lobbyists at all.
All right, Mr. Secretary, thanks so much for being with us, and we'll be back in a moment.